What's up, guys? John Sintes, Cutternation Baseball. It's been a minute since I'm on the podcast. You know what to do. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Today, I have a very special guest. I'm very excited. I have been searching for this human or this idea for upwards of 5 to 6 years. I've had this idea since I got to go to the Mexico facilities where I got to see the kids raised that are now the draft, excuse me, the international signees, almost draft there. Jack Dempsey, you work for the Laurel Springs School. I appreciate meeting you, but for our audience that doesn't know who you are, once you lay down who you are, what you do, don't leave any stone unturned here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate number one the awesome relationship you and I have been working to create. I felt so great coming down to San Diego and sharing some time at Cutternation with you and kind of brainstorming some opportunities for young ball players in the San Diego area. This is year 9 for me at Laurel Springs. I'm the Strategic Partnerships and Development Manager. And it's my role here to connect the world to Laurel Springs for college-bound student athletes, whether it be middle school level athletes. We actually take care of kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and also have a post-grad program for those that want, say, like a 13th year before matriculating to a university. So Laurel Springs was the very first accredited NCAA approved online school in the world's history. And we started here 35 years ago in Ojai, California, and grew from a small cohort of students 35 years ago to over 4,000 students in all 50 states and 70 countries. So what you had just mentioned about the international ball players and Dominican Republic to Kazakhstan to Croatia to everywhere. We have college-bound student athletes in all sports, and baseball, I would say, over the past 5 years has really changed the landscape of youth and playing baseball and the travel demands and everything that goes with it. And so it's great that we get to kind of chat about what's going on modern day in that landscape, and I can always share what I'm seeing from the educational lens and what travel teams are doing and organizations like yours where you care about the academic outcomes, you care about where your ball players are going and the opportunities that they have. And so really honored to be on the show with you to chat.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and everybody that I've talked to, I try to explain, even with my own development and how much was missed and how much time was wasted, honestly. And my mom hates to hear me say that, but she's a 47-year school teacher of math in the middle school era, and we talk about that all the time. Where she's like, "But John, you had the 4.0, you had the 32, you did all the things you were supposed to. I got accepted to every school I applied to. The thing I did not do well was I was not good enough. Number one, I did not throw hard enough. I did not play on the right teams. And when you're not good enough, but you don't know that, and no one's telling you that, there's no way for you to understand." And so I remember meeting guys when I was playing in Mexico, and I'm asking about their life and how Little League was and what they did, and their growth period from 3 until I had met that person was just such a different journey and made so much more sense on why you could do that. And then as I cross comparison that over to my own life, I was just so confused at, like, well, why can't you do this? And so that brings me to, really where I want to go with this is you and I hopped on the phone and you explained the benefits, of the day, of the week, the month, the year, how that works. You've talked to a lot of families and you have a lot of, insight on what we're about to get into here here in San Diego. What is your favorite part about helping these families get a little bit closer?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I will say that there's a universal truth to a college-bound student athlete deciding to take the leap into something that's like an NCAA approved, accredited, situation. Their families more now than ever feel this kind of pressure cooker scenario I would say starting in like fourth grade, fifth grade, where let's say you move out of the rec ball era and you kind of start doing a bit more of travel ball, even if it's just local travel ball. Travel ball, I'll put it in air quotes. Sometimes travel ball could meaning just throughout California, but depending on the levels, I mean, you've got kids traveling all over the country, going to Cooperstown, going to all over the place now. And there's a general theme that it puts such a strain on the family dynamics. And what we're seeing now, especially with how much baseball is played year-round, especially in, say, fall ball, right? In fall travel baseball, you're seeing families and kids that are, let's say, highly academic students. And what happens is they could be at a boarding school, a private school, charter school, or a public school, and they've maxed out their yearly attendance just because they're ambitious and they're getting after their athletic pursuits, still getting A's and B's, right? But now the school's cracking down on the attendance. And, I think it's appalling that you have an ambitious college-bound student athlete or young athlete that's really trying to get after it in life. They're in love with what they do. And now they're being penalized for getting straight A's, but because they had to leave on a Friday and come back on a Monday, now they've maxed out their yearly attendance by Christmas time. And now parents get letters in the mail and all this pressure from the local school districts and even the private schools that parents might pay 30 or 40 grand a year for the nicest private school opportunity. But even the private schools that are physical in nature, they have their bandwidth that gets stretched. And you would think that if you're paying a physical private school tuition, that somehow that they might work with you a little bit, right? But it's not exactly the case. And I'm sure there's a lot of families that will listen to this and know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you're allotted, say, 12 absences a year or what have you, and you've maxed them out by the holidays, what are you going to do when prime time comes and spring comes up and you really want to up your game and maybe you're on a great travel team and you want to take all of the opportunities to spend time at Cutternation for the strength and conditioning, for the development, whether it be pitching or hitting or just anything that you offer, John, and you come highly regarded in the San Diego area. I mean, you're the guy that I was recommended to connect with as well. And I'm glad that we did, because San Diego families are totally feeling it in baseball right now. And you have a lot of kids that are all in on their baseball pathway. Like I said, great students, but to create an immersive situation where you don't have to compromise on either opportunity is the goal nationwide, and why I've curated so many partnerships, whether it be in Long Beach or Corona, all the way to Florida, all the way to Croatia, and anywhere that you could imagine, Dominican Republic. We have Laurel Springs students that are really active ball players that want an immersive day where, say, there's blocks of time that are dedicated, from 8 to 2, right? Where, let's say, half the day is spent working on academics, but they're, in your care. And that means that you can actually say, hey, let's do 2 hours of dedicated math and English. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut away and we're going to go work on strength and conditioning, or we're going to work on pitching or throwing or hitting or anything that's in your wheelhouse of expertise. And then eat a little bit of lunch, come back, do another few hours of study. Maybe they work on, Spanish or math or science or whatever they're taking in their course plan, and end the day on a positive note with this immersion of academics and the specialty that you offer in baseball training. So this is what I see in all 50 states, in 70 countries where we've created partnerships at Laurel Springs for that immersive lifestyle. And that way no one has to compromise. And to your point, kids need to get stronger, right? You want that D1 opportunity, you're going to need some strength, right? You're going to need a lot of things that 20 years ago might not have been the major mover, and it's not all about one thing anymore. So I think it's a great relationship that we have here to offer both.
Yeah, you know, I couldn't be more excited about. I have a couple kids that have already asked questions and stuff, and I have a list here that I'm excited because I know that you have the answers, you have the knowledge that will really help us get to that point. I think, one of the things that a lot of the parents have been asking, that makes sense is, when's the optimum time to do this? I've heard everything from gap year to, sixth grade, sixth, seventh, and eighth. I know everybody's situation's different, ninth, tenth. I read some stuff online. People that this actually really made sense too. I like this idea. There was a couple kids that were committed and actually left their private school. I'm sorry, left their school and went to a Laurel Hill school for a better. I mean, they're in their senior year. Why are they at the school? They don't need. They need to be doing the things they need to do. I just found that so revolutionary because to me time is just the most valuable asset.
Yeah. I mean, what I see I kind of, I'll just use the kind of, phrase of like two different buckets of types of kids that might take the leap or families that might take the leap. You have, I'll use the first obvious, is exactly what you just talked about, right? You have, say they've played for their high school team, public, private, whatever it might be, and they've played, ninth, 10th, and 11th grade. And they've essentially hit, a level of recognition. They're recruited. They've had the collegiate conversations. The coaches want them, and let's face it, they have like 7 or 8 opportunities to go and play college baseball once they graduate high school. So, whether it be situations in Las Vegas, even like I could think of players even that went to Bishop Gorman, like in places that you'd be like, okay, you're going to get recognized. You're playing at that school, like it's got a lot of attention and eyeballs. But then, you kind of realize that 12th grade, do you really need to be in a physical classroom to finish out your senior year when you're already on 20 colleges' radar for your position, for what you offer to that ball club, to what you offer to that team? 12th grade is often best spent at an actual academy, building strength, building resilience and character, working with elite coaching staff. And maybe that's the time to not worry about physical attendance at a physical school. A lot of these guys in 12th grade, they don't need to play for their high school team anymore, And, there's probably a lot of high school coaches that don't like me saying that, but let's face the fact is that there's a lot of showcases. You have Perfect Game USA. You have all of these different situations where they can go out there and get seen. But their day is best spent staying on task because they've already conquered the mission of getting noticed. And they're already, coming to us to just do 12th grade online, because we are NCAA approved and we are UC approved. So UCLA has a little link that I can always share with you, John, and you can hand it out to your families, where it lists every single Laurel Springs course, and it's on the UC website, right? So there's no disqualifiers to going online. Say, if that you're ready for only a senior year of travel opportunity and showcases, and you want to go nationwide and really be seen and do what you have to do, you can come here to wrap up, high school, and you would have done your CIFs, you would have done all of the other things in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, right? So the other bucket is what I typically see for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, which we would call the emerging talent, right? For those that know that they need to, if they want to play varsity in high school out of the gate, and not just, jump onto the freshman team in ninth grade and have to climb through the ranks and things. They're going to need to be a little bit stronger. Their skill set's going to have to be super, super sharp, especially in like a highly competitive Southern California landscape. You want to go play varsity ball for a private school or a public school. What I'm seeing across all states is taking the leap to a Laurel Springs so that you have the flexibility to train, to travel. You're not compromising that college prep academic situation at all. If anything, we're more rigorous than any public school or charter school that you could possibly find anywhere. And so they're taking the leap to have that immersive half day with baseball, half day with academics at the same place, right? Coaches like yourself that, would actually look over their observer account with their parents to say, hey, he's 3 assignments behind in English, so you know what? Tomorrow he's going to spend a little extra time. They can see that the coach cares equally about the academic journey as the baseball journey, which you don't commonly find without these scenarios. Additional stakeholders in a young athlete's life. And that's what I'm seeing across the board, from FTB in Florida to in Las Vegas. Futures everywhere else. Everyone's got a grip on this situation. And in San Diego, I feel like, you're the right trusted entity to offer something like this, because number one, I know that you're gonna get them there athletically, right? And then we can come and complement the Cutternation system by offering what we do with the flexibility and the college prep. And when I say college prep, I mean middle school and up. We're preparing you for college from the beginning. And so you get the flexibility without compromise. That way, by the time, if you want to exit Laurel Springs in 8th grade, that means they've spent more time with you, John. They're ready for that high school opportunity. Maybe they only do Laurel Springs from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and then take the leap. But then that increases their chance of being picked up and, maybe not spending 9th grade on the freshman team, right? They're going to enter the doors of the high school at a higher level and a lot stronger and a lot faster and just better at the game.
Yeah, totally. One of the things I want to get into now is the schedule, right? The advantages of the time, right? You gave me an idea, I already kind of had the idea, but I like how you explained it a lot here, right? The structuring of the day and how much productivity you can get in. You and I were just joking about some AI off air about how things we're using in here and helping with in here, and I'm sure, kids are smarter than ever these days, at least on some of the things that maybe generally parents may not think so, but I think the access to information and what to understand is just so incredible compared to when I was 12 or 13. We didn't have YouTube, at least. There was no slow motion video or things floating around from there. So yeah, talk about those time advantages.
Yeah, basically, when you're living a lifestyle by your own design, instead of just 8 to 3 moving to the sound of the bell ringing, you're really at the wheel of what you can focus on. And the time advantage has to do with a lot of things that aren't addressed in academics. Some kids are inherently, let's say, a bit more math leaning or STEM leaning, and they love sciences and they love math, and that's where they shine. And maybe they might suffer a little bit on the English language and composition part, or the creative writing part, or just kind of strengthening anything. And it could be reversed. Maybe you don't have a math leaning kid, and they need to put a little bit more time into those weaknesses to get themselves up to par. Well, at Laurel Springs, we're not telling you that you have to do English, math, science, social studies, a world language, and an elective every single day of the week. You don't have to do 7 subjects a day. I can make the example because, I have a 12-year-old son, and basically to make the thought that maybe my son needs an extra 2 hours a week so that his math level can rise to where it needs to be. You're not going to get that in a physical school and then go play travel baseball. You're going to have to figure out a way to hire private tutors. You're going to have to do all these different things to get their levels up. But when you're manipulating and mastering time to your advantage, you can double down on your strengths and your weaknesses. So sometimes parents and faculty here will call it Math Monday. And if you're not, say, inherently a math-oriented child, we all know that walking into Math Monday, you're not going to just have a 40-minute class of math, because clearly that's never been good enough to get you to an A or B level in math. And why would we do that again next year if it hasn't worked this whole time? So maybe what would make sense for Monday is that you enter the doors of Cutternation, and maybe you spend a little bit of time in the morning, doing strength and conditioning or something physical with you for maybe an hour and a half. And then maybe you're working on maybe 2 hours of math or 2.5 hours of math, which clearly you need help with. And then go blow off some steam and train a little bit more, come back in, and then maybe you would work on Spanish or something else that day, or science, right? So manipulating time means that you're not disregarding all of your subjects. It's just that you're able to you can strategize what makes sense based on your strengths and weaknesses to get you up to speed. And if my kid can do an essay in 1 hour and your kid can do an essay in 2 hours, I don't see how your kid should be penalized an hour to get that right, okay? It takes time. Think of every middle school kid you know, right? Are they raising their hands in the classroom anymore? Or are they too worried about the 15 buddies in the classroom, heckling them for raising their hand, right? We all know that this is true. It's like a social experiment, not an experience. So middle school's crazy. We were all kids and we kind of remember, but as parents we quickly forget once our kids get to middle school what it's really like. At Laurel Springs, if you needed help with an essay or a math assignment, instead of raising your hand in a classroom, like a grown-up, you're going to make an appointment with your teacher for one-on-one time. And imagine the work that can be done if your child is in pre-algebra, John, and they're not understanding a concept, and you know your kid's not the type of kid that's going to raise their hand in the classroom. Think of the level jumping that takes place when they make 2 appointments a week with their math teacher for one-on-one time, and the teacher busts out a virtual whiteboard, and one-on-one they work through that math formula together until they get it. So obviously your math skill set jumps from there because of the intimacy of that situation. And you can make appointments with your teachers Monday through Friday. And just like in college, our teachers have office hours Monday through Friday. So you could just pop into office hours, or you can make an appointment. And it's all structured around their lifestyle and what they need. And they can work independently, and there's plenty of tools to keep them on task. It's not the Wild West. It's not come and go when you please or anything like that, to do some myth busting, right? We're holding them accountable. Parents have observer accounts. They can see every single bit of communication between the teachers and the students. If the parents allow someone like yourself as a facility owner and a coach observer account, then I can actually give you as the coach an observer account too, which really helps you quarterback the situation and manage the situation. And you'll know whether that student needs a little bit of extra time on a Friday. Maybe they need to catch up on an essay that they put off or something like that. But the more stakeholders in the life of a student athlete, the better the result. And there's been just endless success, not just in baseball, but in all sports, when you're providing that immersive lifestyle of both.
Yeah, that's
I remember when I first got to Laurel Springs, there was a really popular young kid named Bo Bichette, and he was just in the World Series last year for
Yeah.
Toronto. Right?
Hmm.
That's an example of a Laurel Springs high school alumni. Bo Bichette graduated Laurel Springs, and then he ended up not taking the full collegiate path. He was ready to go, but he needed that lifestyle by design to keep up with the travel demands of not just his dad in the sport, but everybody else too, and having to play internationally and doing everything they need to do. And a lot of players from the Dominican Republic, they take full opportunity to use Laurel Springs so that they can be NCAA, approved and ready to go as well. But it
That's
just depends on
actually
what you want.
right. Right. And us on the board here in San Diego, you brought me into two different things. First, let's go into more of those technicalities of what the school is right there. And that I like how you were explaining the bridge of the different portals and the stuff and that. And then the other one, Tijuana is a huge market over here for people trying to get over. And I haven't heard of a solution like that idea, the NCAA approved process for that. I think that definitely could be something that is really big. I have some connections down there. Obviously, I played down there. For everybody that knows me, I love going down there until I get my passport stolen. And if that ever happens to any of you, just trust me, it is not easy. You can't just get another one. There's a whole verification process. So I just got that back. We got Mexican League playoffs starting up soon. I'm pretty sure Tijuana starts this week. So that's exciting. And then there's academies down there and stuff. So yeah, like I said, let's go through those technicalities. I feel like that's a really good process where the parents are going to understand, what they're getting, what does it look like, the expectations of that model from that, and then we'll talk about some of those international ideas as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can tell you is there's a lot of noise online that parents would hear, right? So you have this whole segment on Instagram and TikTok, and there's all these experts on being NCAA eligible, right? If you go on Instagram, you're going to find 52 experts with 100,000 followers on NCAA eligibility and this, that, and the other. And the bottom line is, it's not a game of minimums. And that's the one thing that I really hope parents take away from this discussion is when you see a lot of influencers talking about the minimum requirements for NCAA eligibility, what they're forgetting is that the NCAA is not accepting your child to a university. The universities themselves have their own admissions requirements. And yes, to play college sports, you have to meet the eligibility center requirements. But unfortunately, I think parents are kind of almost sucked into this system of just believing that you need 16 core credits, over the case of 4 years, and that you need a minimum, 2.4 GPA. But listen, if NCAA approved was the only thing that got you into Princeton to play baseball, I think everybody at Princeton would laugh. And from Duke as well, we had Laurel Springs baseball players graduate from Laurel Springs. They took senior year to just do travel and showcases. Duke already wanted them. They needed them to finish strong and to finish NCAA approved. And that's what we did. And we conquered that mission. There's Laurel Springs students at Duke right now. And I think one of the biggest things is you and I had this conversation about what that Duke coach was asking wasn't whether or not they satisfied the minimum requirements for eligibility. They were asking how many AP courses were on their transcript, weren't they? Right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually a fascinating thing for me after enrolling 3,000 plus student athletes that are Olympic level, Major League Soccer, the highest levels of junior tennis. And over the past few years, certainly baseball now, with travel ball being what it is, it's allowing that kind of flow to come in. But I would say to parents to try to reduce the noise and start thinking more about reverse engineering the outcome based on what the university standard is. So if the UC system has a standard and you're spending all of your time listening to folks that are talking about the minimum requirements to be NCAA approved, I just want to say, as a dad and as a guy who works in this particular space with athletes, the minimum requirements, you need to mind them and stay eligible, but you should be going for the maximum on your transcripts. You want to open every single door you can because you need that college coach to be your advocate. This notion that that college coach wants your ball player and that as long as you meet the minimums, it's all going to work out, that's not the conversation you want to put that coach into with the admissions department at Duke or Princeton or UCLA or anywhere you want to play baseball, UNLV, whatever it might be. The minimums will always get you the minimum result. And so if you want those D1 opportunities, we exist for those discerning students, for the discerning parents that don't want to compromise on any of those opportunities at the D1 level, especially at highly selective schools. So that's one thing I want to just message out to parents is, try to limit the amount of Instagram noise when it comes to, your students, and the academic planning, So whether you start in middle school or whether you're coming here for high school at any grade level, just remember, we're here to basically be the rigorous option. There's no easy button. We're here to provide the academics that every college in the nation respect and what they demand on the admission side. We want to make that decision for the coaches that much easier.
Yeah, it's, great explanation. I appreciate that. There's so many angles that, I'm sitting here taking notes while you're talking because I'm adding more to what I need here because I have so many good conversations. I think you had, or somebody on your team had somebody reach out, and already look for some stuff in there. And, it's going to happen. What I'm excited about and planning on doing, and this is the dream, obviously it's not going to start this way, but what I had actually seen FTV, for example, some people over in Miami that I had heard, because Miami is kind of crazy. I need to tell the internet this, because if what I'm about to say was happening in San Diego, all hell's breaking loose here. So in Miami, and I'm not quite sure if this is entire Florida, and I am from Florida, and I've never heard this. I heard this a couple years ago when I was there. You can transfer mid-season and play.
Yeah.
Okay? You could just transfer mid-season and play, no issues. I think there's a limit. It may be 3, but I'm pretty sure there's no limit. Okay? And what that means is you could pretty much create a super team if you want. There's probably some kind of GM situation going on with the different schools. Players are jumping left and right. It's even more competitive there to get on a really good team. But with opportunities, and now that the private sector's kind of jumped out into tournaments, you can do a different thing, and that's what I'm excited about, because with a controlled environment, a place to practice, a place to train, rain or shine, a place to be, compete against, to get stronger, to get faster, the baseball IQ. I'm a nerd, huge on teaching the game. One of the exciting things that I want to do is I want to recreate one of the things I did with Roger Clemens, not necessarily Roger Clemens here, but one of the things I want to do with these players that are coming here is where we watched Roger Clemens' 1986 20 strikeout game with him, and he went over it. And going pitch for pitch, especially back then, no pitch clock, he didn't need a pitch clock because umpires were keeping the games going, and it was a different thing. That entire game is online, and I couldn't even tell you the last time there was any kid that has been phone or device down and has sat down and watched this. And that's what I'm excited to show these kids, because there's such these little in-between pitch moves and movements and things and emotional states that you get to teach these kids and then go out onto the field in the game and watch them succeed and remember some of these lessons. So my plan in here is we're going to start off with a high school prep team, so basically 6th, 7th, and 8th grade guys. That's what we're looking for here. We're going to probably practice for at least a month or two. We've got a field in mind. This place that we're at now pretty much has everything that we need. And then we can start jumping in tournaments. And you don't need a district. You don't need anything. You can set up some scrimmage games, which is what we plan on doing. I have an awesome staff here of guys that are just baseball excited, just like everybody here is in San Diego. And so if you're with our full program, which is going to be, 9 to 5, basically, what we plan on is utilizing all of the space that's not being used in the morning. We plan on going outside, possibly to the beach, possibly to the fields that's right around the corner, so that we can actually develop and get the daily reps that's needed. I think that's the most interesting thing about what I saw in Mexico, is that I saw a facility that it was wake up and train, go eat breakfast, go work on your skills as actually a baseball player. Ground balls, pop flies, hitting, the skill work, break for lunch, after lunch, not necessarily nap time, but let's just relax, work on our work, get our skills going inside of that. And then depending on how you feel from that, maybe get another hitting session in afterwards, and then you're going home. And that is something I would have died for. A 2-a-day baseball idea with school in between, and being able to have an immersive experience that every day you get to chase the dream. It's just a dream for everybody that it wants to get there. And like myself, and pretty much I'd say 99.5% of the baseball players, you actually don't even know what it takes until you do something like this. Like, going all in isn't necessarily all in until you do that. And after I broke my arm, that was actually one of the things that made a big difference to my own brain, is coming back from a broken arm, having 2 surgeries, not being able to throw, figuring it out, all the rehab, all the money, all the side jobs, all the things that I did, and then finally executing, getting invited, getting to a training situation, making professional baseball, and then eventually winning a championship. I just so excited about how early you can get kids started on that. I mean, we've been doing this long enough here. We opened up the buildings here in 2020. I've been doing stuff here since 2016, but a lot of my kids that kind of started with the building in 2020, they're just now freshmen, sophomores right now, and man, it's just so exciting to see these guys be so far ahead and just know from what they came from. Like, they're overly prepared. I mean, we have freshmen that have gotten the box against big league arms with big league experience and have been okay and competed. Do they get dominated? Absolutely. But that's the point. Like, you have the brain and the confidence to get in against a big leaguer and try to get your best chance. And like, you just don't get those opportunities when you're sitting in social studies at 11:30. It just the time frame and the opportunities aren't the same. And that's the thing I'm so excited about.
Well, John, one thing I could tell you, that for the past 9 years, sometimes to a parent, to a student, to a coach, what a Laurel Springs and athletic day could be can sometimes feel very abstract, because we all grew up in an era where a lot of these things weren't possible, right? And so we could talk about it quite a bit, but really what it comes down to is clock management, right? And how do you structure, what does an immersive day actually look like? And I'll see if I can share my screen here just for a sec. And keep in mind, you can make your own clock, John, okay? Whatever you need this clock to be is whatever it can be. But I just want to show you, and also to parents who can't conceptualize it, and it's not your fault. We all grew up. Listen, the last time I played structured baseball was 1996, okay? But what I'm trying to explain is bedtime, 10 p.m., wake up at 7. That's 9 hours of sleep. Does your kid currently get 9 hours of sleep? Do they get enough recovery for their sport? Hot topic, right? You load in an hour for breakfast. You notice here we're starting the day on this particular clock, John, 8 to 10, 2 hours of Laurel Springs. Maybe they just focus on 2 subjects from 8 to 10. I've built in 4 hours of athletic training, okay? So 8 to 10, they're focusing on their studies in middle school, whether it be pre-algebra, whatever math level they're at, you know, ancient civilizations is typically sixth grade social studies, you know, whatever it might be. You got 2 hours to focus on two subjects. Now I'm giving you 4 hours to go get better at your sport in the middle of the day. Okay? And now I'm giving you an hour for lunch. And then all I'm asking is to log back in from 3 to 5 and do another 2 hours of academics. Maybe you're focusing on your English and your social studies, right? You want to throw world language in there, an elective. Every day of the week can be a little bit different. We can tweak this clock. Well, like I said before, this is just a sample example clock. But the days of saying we don't have enough time for both, it's just not true. And you could see I built in another hour and a half where I just put workout, which is strength and conditioning. You could substitute any of this training, any of these blocks of time for academics, but you can have both. It's about the structure of the day. And what these elite training facilities all throughout the country, in the Dominican Republic, yes, Mexico, yes, El Salvador, yes, all over the world, what they're doing is creating a clock just like this, where there's no compromise on the academics, and there's absolutely enough time. What is this, 4 hours of sports training plus an hour and a half of workout time? I'm not saying you have to do it every day, but it's there. It's right there on the clock for you. You can't tell me that you can't have both. But what, and then I even built in, John, just to be thoughtful to the person I shared this with, I built in from 7:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. is family time. And I put dinner 6 to 7:30, so technically that's 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. is family time.
Yeah.
Right? So the only thing that prevents an athlete in the United States from doing what they're doing in all of these other countries that are taking the game over is they're not creating a thoughtfully curated day of both academics and athletics at the same time. With us, we've been making that happen for 35 years. That's why we're super popular. Tennis, the game of tennis, I have partnerships that predate me. We have 20-year partnerships with Rafa Nadal Academy, all the major tennis academies in Europe. You want to know why European tennis tends to be the dominant, in tennis, like globally? It's because they figured out how to create immersive athletic and academic day. So we'll create a clock for you, John, anytime you want, but this is basically just a visual example of what you can do when you throw out the conventional brick and mortar schedule and say, look, my kid needs something different. I'm not exactly thrilled about their day-to-day experience at the schoolhouse anyway, and I would rather them double down on their strengths, and maybe you do it for a year in 7th grade to see if, hey, is this the right fit? Is this the right time to get a little bit stronger and faster pre-high school? And see where things go from there. I mean, we talked about the college coaches, but on an academic transcript, I mean, there's not a university in the world that's going to see what you did in 7th grade anyway. So I think if you're going to, bet on yourself and kind of up the stakes and kind of go for it, I think what you're mentioning for middle school makes all the sense in the world. You don't see credits until they become credits, right? So, no college will ever see middle school. So we do see a large populace of middle school here at Laurel Springs for that exact reason. And hey, they might leave us and go to a physical school for high school. But they're going to that physical school for high school, bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, with a higher athletic IQ. And then because we're a very rigorous private school, they're going to enter any next step opportunity in better shape than they would have otherwise. So academically.
Yeah. I can't repeat enough. Like, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise. Like this, I've written 10 notes already on things that are ideas of things that have just sparked another angle in a lane. Because really, I think, the parents need to understand and align with that story that puts them in the right thing. I mean, myself and what I see here and what I do talk to some of the parents is I hear a lot of like, how are some of these kids, especially after being on the national circuit with JK Select, and then seeing a lot of these kids, and a lot of these kids here, I'm finding out doing a hybrid online school and public school. So that's like an interesting thing that's kind of happening as well on that. I can't imagine that the detail is as good as from what you guys have been doing for the past 35 years, especially knowing the school system's execution and the public idea. It sounds like a good idea, but I mean, who knows who's executing the things, on top of that. So, I'm
Yeah,
excited to be able to partner with you guys and understand that. Let's get into that international conversation. I think there's something to be said about, south of the border down here in Mexico. And, I have a soft spot for a lot of those families that are down there. Like I said, the amount of New Year's Eve and Christmas morning and Christmas Eves that I've spent with those, and Thanksgivings that I spent with a lot of the families and the players that were down there, is just amazing. So I have a great love for Mexico. They accepted me with warm arms, and I love them too.
yeah, me too. My wife was born in Guanajuato, Mexico, and I love our students from Mexico and El Salvador, and obviously the Dominican Republic. Just beautiful, beautiful human beings. It's an honor to serve international families, and every country has their own rules about, say, doing school outside of a physical schoolhouse, most of which they're just looking for accreditation, right? Number one, which we have the WASC accreditation, which is the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And then we're also accredited through Cognia, which is a global accreditation. And then we're UC approved, and we're also NCAA approved for every university in the country. And then on top of all of that, our AP courses are College Board regulated. So we actually teach to the standard of the AP test itself. Unlike some schools where you might have a professor teaching what they want to teach in this particular AP psychology course, we teach to the standards of the actual AP exam that they're going to sit down for. So we just have a style that's a bit more thoughtful. Internationally, if you want to go and travel and play overseas, this kind of gives you the opportunity to go and do that. And it's just a great opportunity. I think a lot of parents would certainly take a few more opportunities to play down south and kind of experience, what those levels look like if they didn't have to be back to the schoolhouse Monday at 7:45 or 8. So this just gives you the opportunity for a lifestyle by your own design. Like I said, we have students in 70 countries. It's north of 70. It's probably 78 countries as of right now. I'm so used to saying 70 countries, but it's more than that. But basically, yeah, we have global students everywhere. Australia to South Korea, yes, Japan. You better believe we have Japanese baseball players at Laurel Springs. And no mysteries as to what's going on with the science of baseball there. So, we have a lot of interest globally from international students that really want to come play Division I baseball at a university. Division I any sport, frankly, from all over the world. So there's nothing off limits. It's amazing.
Yeah, maybe you could map out, because you really just turned me all over the place with the over the 40 situation. Maybe what would be a good piece of advice for, you got a 13, 14-year-old family baseball player that is in Tijuana. They want to get better education, maybe make it to the States, Division I. What would you recommend their process be for that?
Yeah, so even if you didn't go to school in a U.S. system of education, right, like with the same formatting of credits, like in Europe they had the IB system. Every country has their own educational model that they've adopted pretty well nationwide. So what we can do is assessments in English, we can do assessments in math, we can look at their previous schooling records from Mexico or El Salvador or wherever they're from, and we use a process of credit evaluation. And so they're not going to lose anything that they've earned if they're in high school. It'll transfer over. There's just an accredited process to give them, that transfer into the U.S. system. And we're going to make sure that our counseling department's going to work with them to strategically ensure that we have researched what they learned last at their school, say like in Mexico or wherever it was. So we're going to put in as much research until we're absolutely certain of what math did they last leave off in that particular 7th grade in Mexico or 8th grade in Nicaragua, or like wherever you might come from. This isn't just I'm enrolling my kid in 7th grade and I hope it works out. No, we have dedicated teams that research the international transcripts, that pick up the phone, that do all the data in the research about, okay, where did that teacher last leave off if they were at a school in Tijuana for 7th grade? We'll go and pull the syllabus of what they taught in 7th grade there, right? Because we want to make sure that the math progression is spot on and that they're actually heading towards that college prep. And if we need, translation of documents, through our partnership, I'm happy to cover the cost of translation, for any of your ball players, right? That usually is one of those things that costs parents a lot of money, but if they're a Cutternation family, I would help out with that to try to alleviate that burden. But the placement of courses all has to do with prerequisites. So we would just make sure we know where they left off internationally, and then meet with the family on Zoom, meet with a coach like yourself or whatever academy they attend, make sure everyone's on the same page about why they're placed in this particular course or that particular course. Maybe they need English as a second language support. So you never know what an international student might need, but we're going to thoughtfully take the steps to make sure it's the right fit. If it's not the right fit for the child, it's okay to not do it. Not every opportunity is perfect for every child. Frankly, that's why the public school system doesn't work, because it's the same for every single child. And my wife's a public school teacher. She's probably going to, nudge me for saying that, but she knows I'm right. We want to make sure that the experience at Laurel Springs is unique to the student and their journey every single time. So if it takes us a little while just to kind of meet with the family, meet with the student, better understand their needs, figure out where their math level is, their English level, work on strengths and weaknesses. Do they have an IEP or something like that, or a 504 plan? We've had plenty of students here that, with medical conditions like dyslexia, we're able to, thoughtfully carve out a plan for most students, right? We can't put a hologram in the living room telling your child to sit down, right? That's the one thing an online school can't do. But we can do just about everything else that you can think of to make it as intimate and personal as it needs to be, and keeping parents in the loop about every single step along the way, and coaches like yourself. So it's a completely personalized approach to learning. And like I said, 35 years in, we're just known to be the most trusted in the space, especially from the university level. You can call any college in America and ask them, do you accept Laurel Springs graduates? And the answer is yes. So
That's awesome. And would that be the same process for would that be the same process for just an American kid? Like, how would that work for like an onboarding, right? Like, walk us that, right? We have somebody that is excited to sign up for Cutternation in the Laurel Springs School. They want to do it. Like, let's take it through, from the first click.
yeah, I mean, basically what would happen, John, is you know, a family could reach out to the admissions team at Laurel Springs, or they can email me, jdempsey@laurelsprings.com, and just tell them, tell us that they're working with you. Or if you warmly introduce me to someone, of course, we'll make sure that they get nurtured well. But the first thing we're going to do is kind of find out what parents are really looking for and what the students are looking for in their journey, right? We're also going to collect academic records from their last school attended, right? So we need to figure out what's coming our way. It's really similar to, we're both in California, you and I, but if we both moved to Nebraska, we would have to send the academic records to that new school in Nebraska, right? That's how the next school is going to figure out how to place you in courses. They're going to look at your transcripts. Right. So whether it's elementary school, middle school, or high school, we're going to do a full academic review of the transcripts. We're going to ask if there's ever been modifications or accommodations as far as like the learning style or IEPs or anything that we need to know to be successful in helping your child. And from there, we're going to start developing a course plan and have parent meetings. And sometimes parents will bring you in, John. It just depends on what's going on. They might want to have questions, because it's the most sensitive topic. These are our babies. I've got 2 boys. It has to be thoughtful and it has to be very, very intentional. And you should always look before you leap. You shouldn't sign up for any academic program without fully investigating and vetting every component of it. You could run your AI about Laurel Springs. You can call every university and ask their opinion. You can call coaches, or you could even attend a virtual open house, which is probably a really good thing to do. We have 2 or 3 a month where you can attend a learning session, like an info session about Laurel Springs, and that has a Q&A, and you can ask teachers, our head of school, you could talk to our counselors, you could talk to current students and ask them what their day's like. And then if you need a demo of what things look like visually, to do coursework, we can set up a demo time for you and kind of, walk you through what a day in the life of a student looks like. And then it's up to you at Cutternation to create that clock that I showed you, right? You're creating that clock in a thoughtful way to make sure that both things can get conquered. And then after that, they can begin. We have rolling enrollment, which means that every single Wednesday is a unique start at Laurel Springs. So sometimes, depending on the sport, we have students that intentionally start at the end of September. They start their school year the last week of September on purpose, because if you're a college golf prospect or a college tennis prospect, it's advantageous for you to use the month of September to be outdoors and play your sport. There's no reason for you to be at Laurel Springs and go back to school when everyone else goes back to school. It's kind of irrelevant. You're on your own journey, your own pathway. You've got 10 months to complete your school year, and you can pace yourself to finish faster if you want to pace yourself in that way. So it just depends on what you want, but we can do a mid-year transfer even. Let's say you go to a charter school right now, and you want to start the year at that charter school, and then by the time Christmas comes, you've decided to take the leap to Laurel Springs for online for the spring. We can do a mid-year transfer, and you would only have to do the second half of your grade year. So whether it's the whole year, whether it's one course, if there's a school that, maybe they don't offer a course that your kid wants, pretty good odds that we have it. So full year, mid-year, we could accommodate all scenarios as long as we have the transparency of what's going on with the situation and we can get the academic records for the child.
That's a really helpful, I mean, we've been crushing for an hour going on right now on what you're doing. I'm so excited. Jack, thank you so much for your time. I really feel like you covered all my questions here. I can't wait, for us to get this ball rolling and getting, some of these families in here. I've got a couple emails from some people already that are just, trying to inquire for that. So I know you and I will be working together from there. For all you guys at home, you can visit our website, cutternation.net. There's a baseball school section. We've got some videos on there. I'll have to send you an updated one. I'm in the middle of constructing some more. Like I said, you just added like 10 more talking points and videos to things that I have to knock out now. I appreciate that. But it's important because there's almost too many scenarios to not mention, so you can make sure that people understand how important this really is and how eligible they are. I mean, I couldn't imagine, if a mom or dad were starting down this journey, just me, what I was searching, like I told you, I was completely searching the wrong thing. And I had no clue. And it wasn't until this AI that I have here that like corrected me. It was like, no, that's actually not what you want. You want this. And that's where Laurel Springs was brought to me. So, and then after doing my due diligence, I was like, wow, this is incredible. So thank you again, my friend. I appreciate it. Do you have anything else you want to sign off with?
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you're so gracious when I popped in San Diego. I've got my Cutternation hat there on the fridge here in my new office, and looking forward to working with you and any family. The only thing I can say is diligence, diligence, diligence regarding any academic offering for your child. It's okay to be skeptical. As a dad working in education, believe me, I am the biggest skeptic, and I have the highest standard for my kid, right? So research, research, research. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm easy to find. You can go on LinkedIn. You could type in Jack Dempsey, Laurel Springs. Matter of fact, you probably see with all of the sports organizations on there that I partner with and that we work with at Laurel Springs. And you can go to laurelsprings.com and join a virtual open house. You don't have to be on camera. You don't have to have your microphone on, but you can ask the tough questions to the education team. So if you have a really tough education-related question, go to the open house, and you have my permission to completely grill them on how they handle certain situations in academia, right? Get your questions answered in a very direct way. And whether it's Laurel Springs or any other situation, just have that discerning lens. It's okay to be skeptical, but it's also okay to take a leap of faith and allow your kids to go for something, because that's important too. So I'm here for you guys if you need me, and John, you let me know what you need anytime, and I'm always around.
Sounds good, brother. I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys once again. This was a great time. I can't wait to chop this up and get it all going. Like I said, like and subscribe if you haven't. If you are interested in this, jump onto the baseball school. I just got a text message right now. Hey, Coach, pretty excited about this baseball school idea. Give me a call when you get a chance. So love to see that. Good thing the frequency and the matrix is going out into the universe. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks, guys.